What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 2 of Keeping Up College Football. This is another jam-packed slate. Coaches love to talk earlier this week. I've also dove into some more conferences, into some more teams, and we have a fully updated SEC power rankings for post-spring. We're getting into some early Heisman conversation. Everybody loves to hear about who everyone thinks will win the award come the end of the year. There's 4 guys that I think right now are a little bit above the rest. We'll get into them. Early game of the year contenders. I also wanted to go over, I think there's 3 games that are just going to matter more this season that have huge college football playoff implications. Maybe they're precursors to a national title or a semifinal game. Next, there's some environments in college football that are really, really special. I've had the privilege to go to a handful of them. Here's my top 5 environments throughout all of college football. Then after that, we're going to look at some of the best coordinator moves that have happened in the offseason. A lot of people wondered why were their teams where they were in my power rankings that I had in episode number 1. We're going to get into some of those coordinator moves that really impacted that. Next, we're going to look at a conversation that's been had on X over the last couple of weeks and really over like the last 2 to 3 years, which is what's the future in for Power 4 football and for the G6? Because it's very complex. It's certainly not black and white. And there's a lot of different avenues that it could go down. And then finally, like always, we're going to wrap it up with some good old NDSU talk, and we're going to update what happened in the last week. And there really was some groundbreaking news. So, first, for no reason whatsoever, Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian just wanted to take shots at Ole Miss, just for the love of the game. And we'll start off with Steve Sarkisian because I think it's a little bit gentler. So he basically says, at Texas, we only take 50% of academic credit hours for players, which can hurt them getting a degree quicker when you transfer into Texas because only 50% of your credits end up counting towards graduation. We're at somewhere like Ole Miss, they take all your credits, and all you have to do is take basket weaving to graduate from Ole Miss, which is a very famous knock on not just Ole Miss, but a handful of SEC schools. I think Ole Miss is the most blaring because their acceptance rate is like 98%. It is the lowest in the SEC. But this idea that you can graduate from some of these SEC schools and that they're going to just push athletes through is nothing new. And for a guy like Steve Sarkisian, I understand how it probably could suck on the recruiting trail because Texas is a place that values academics at a really, really high tier, and it is incredibly important. It's one of the best public institutions in the most prosperous country in the world. So it makes sense, and it makes sense how that could be annoying, and I understand how that could hinder recruiting in some ways. Big shot at Ole Miss. Ole Miss plays Texas this year. I'm very curious to see how that matchup will now go because Steve Sarkisian took a completely unneeded shot at Ole Miss and the integrity of that program. And I expect Ole Miss to retaliate at least a little bit somewhere down the road. I don't think anything's been said yet from Pete Golding or anybody about that comment. This one, on the other hand, there has been a lot said on TikTok, on X, and that was the Lane Kiffin comment saying grandparents are not letting kids go to Ole Miss because the history of Ole Miss and essentially how related to the Confederacy that they've been in the past, the whole story behind the Ole Miss mascot, which is, well, Ole Miss. It's not Old Mississippi. It is Ole Miss, which was famously the wives of plantation owners were known as Ole Miss. And he said, well, that doesn't come up at Baton Rouge. People are not worried about segregation when it comes to Baton Rouge, which I find very hypocritical. Because LSU, the Tigers, is not actually named after a tiger. It's named after, and check my story because this is paraphrasing, but it's essentially was a rifleman group named the Tigers that were literally soldiers for the Confederacy. So I'm not quite sure how he can make that comment about Ole Miss. And maybe it was a pure observation, which is what he claimed it as. But Lane Kiffin's not necessarily been described as, transparent, trustworthy, and honest. So that was absolutely a shot. And I just really don't get it coming from an LSU head coach. And then we get to the actual game. And I'll give you a little tidbit. The game is going to be mentioned later. The game that happens on September 19th where LSU goes to Oxford. Well, it's just another storyline around that game. Another idea of Lane Kiffin taking a shot that he didn't need to. When he left, the way he left, he burned down every bridge in that city. And he just went back to burn down to make sure he burnt every bridge down. I don't really get it. I don't know what this accomplishes, especially the Ole Miss one. The Texas and Steve Sarkisian comment around Ole Miss, maybe you can play it off as like it was just a statement, and he was using Ole Miss as an example. The Lane Kiffin one was a complete shot that's borderline hypocritical from a guy who's burned down every bridge in that city that he possibly can. So overall, there was tons of shots fired at Ole Miss this week. Not really exactly sure how Ole Miss is going to respond, but very interesting. And it will hype up this Texas game and this LSU game like nothing else. Okay, next. The SEC Power Rankings. Where do I have teams 1 through 16? Now that spring's over, we've seen the portal kids and how they've adapted a little bit. We've seen a few upcoming recruits if they did enroll early. And we've just seen how the returning production and the new coaching staffs are operating. At the bottom, I still have Arkansas. I think this team is worse talent-wise than they were a year ago. You lose Taylon Green. You lose your running back. They're gonna struggle. Now, will they only win 2 games? My guess is they'd win more, just because I don't know how you lost to Memphis a year ago. That is an inexplainable loss. I think the defense will be slightly better, but there's still just way too many offensive questions. And Silverfield cannot be judged off this first year because he has the worst talented team in the SEC. So he could be a great coach, and this team might win 4 games. Next, I have Kentucky. Kentucky did a lot of good things in the portal. They went out and got a lot of players. But my whole knock on Kentucky is outside of the offensive line portal guys that they brought in, tons of inexperience. Think Kenny Minchie, very inexperienced quarterback. My big guys in terms of like injury worry is Nick Anderson and CJ Baxter. Like, they're awesome players when they're on the field. And if they're healthy and they're able to reach their potential, like, yeah, they'll be really, really good at Kentucky. There's also the chance that they get injured and play 3 games each. So it's like, I can't rely on those guys to really carry this team through an SEC schedule. And when you look at a lot of those other transfers, tons of unproven guys, like Kenny Minchie, a guy that just has never played, never started at Notre Dame, was never going to start at Notre Dame. Way too many questions. Mississippi State, I got at 14. This roster intrigues me a little bit. I think they're as talented as they've been in some time. Kamario Taylor is a really, really good quarterback. And I really, really do like him, and I think he'll be successful in the future. I just think Mississippi State's a little too, like a year too early is kind of what I'm going for. Vanderbilt, I got at 13. They're very young. What are they going to look like post Diego Pavia? My guess is they're going to regress a little bit. Now, maybe they're somewhere around 10 through 12 instead of 13. Maybe. I do see this team regressing. I don't think they have the talent they've had in years past. A lot of those guys are now in the NFL. 12, I got Auburn. Auburn's kind of that next tier of like, okay, this team's got some upside, but there's still too many question marks. And for Auburn, that's wide receiver and defensive line. They're just too inconsistent for me, and I don't know exactly what I'm getting. The good news is a lot of those wide receivers played at USF. Think of the RPO, the mesh offense, that the offense will be for Auburn next year. And it's like, okay, maybe they have success. Maybe they win 1-score games, and maybe they do end up at 8-4, maybe 9-3. But for right now, I got them at 12. Very similar story with Florida at 11. I like the roster, if I'm being honest with you. I think the roster's really, really talented, but I think there's 2 key position groups that I'm not believing in right now, and that's offensive line and that's quarterback. Just too big of questions there. And if you do not have a quarterback in the SEC, it is remarkably hard for me to believe that you are going to be a great team. It's happened before in the past, but it's really difficult to do. And I don't know if Florida has the roster to where their quarterback can be subpar and they're still successful. The good news for Florida, their schedule is pretty easy. So maybe they do end up with a better record than expected, in part because they don't need to be a top 5 team in the SEC to end up with a handful of wins this season, or more than a handful of wins. 10, I got Tennessee. Tennessee's going to be a good team. My biggest worry is the offense. I know they're returning 9 starters. Their quarterback play looked really bad in spring ball. Certainly didn't help them. Still big-time defensive questions as well in terms of what will they look like. Injuries have kind of been a problem in the past for them, particularly at cornerback a year ago. They got to stay healthy. Jim Knowles, might be mentioned later in this episode, needs to be really good. And if Tennessee wants to be a top 25 team, maybe a college football playoff team, defense has got to be really, really good. South Carolina got at 9. I've been very, very vocal about how much I like this South Carolina team. I love Dylan Stewart. I think he's a top 5 pick. I like Lenore Sellers. I like some things that they did on the offensive line. Jacarius Peaks, as long as he's healthy, I think he'll be really good up front. I like the secondary quite a bit. I think South Carolina's going to be a good team. I got them like very much middle of the SEC. 1-score games, and this has included Tennessee, Florida, and Auburn. 1-score games are your season. You got to be good in 1-score games. A year ago, South Carolina wasn't. I think they'll be better this year. Moving to 8. Give me Missouri. Maud Hardy, terrible incident within the last week. He ended up getting shot. He looks like he'll be good, and it looks like he'll recover, which is good for him just in life, and also obviously good for the Missouri team. He needs to be good. I think Austin Simmons will be fine. Wide receiver is a bit of a worry, and then returning production on defense is a huge question mark for me. I think they'll be good enough. And Eli Drinkwitz has been really consistent in the SEC. You can say a lot of things about he's not broken through to that like next tier yet, which he hasn't. But he's been a very, very serviceable coach. At a program like Missouri, I got them at 8. I think they'll be good. Ole Miss at 7. A lot of people think that that is a little bit too low. But here's what I'm telling you. Losing Charlie Weis is going to hurt. He's one of the best offensive coordinators in the entire country. He's a star. And I understand they still have one of the best best quarterbacks and best running backs in all of college football, but their wide receivers worry me a little bit. And then how great will the defense be? Some people tell me it's going to be a lot better. Some people tell me it's going to be a lot worse. I think it'll be very similar. I think Ole Miss will be good. Another team, one-score games are going to be everything for Ole Miss. Give me the 6. Texas A&M. Another team that lost an offensive coordinator. Colin Klein's now the head coach at Kansas State. That's a big-time loss. What will Marcel Reed look like? And for Texas A&M, at the end of the season a year ago, they didn't look that good. When they played good teams, they really didn't look good. Think Texas. Think Miami. What are they going to look like next year? Are we going to see the team that beat Notre Dame, that rolled LSU on the road? Or are we going to see the team that gave up explosive plays and turned the ball over too much? Because both of those were Texas A&M a year ago, and they return a ton of talent. Their only really big losses were Concepcion and then Howell. They're going to be a good team, but how good will they look against good teams? That's my biggest worry, because at the end of the year, they kind of had a good schedule, and then they didn't really prove themselves at the end. Getting into the top 5, I'd say these are the teams that you could see ending up in the SEC championship game, maybe even winning it. LSU, I got at 5. You bring in Charlie Weis. You still have Baker at defensive coordinator, one of the best portal classes in the entire country. Why are they at 5 and not higher? One, Sam Levitt's availability is going to be a question for me. The wide receiver play should be really, really good. Running back still a question, right? They brought in some talent through the portal. Do they have that guy? Because LSU a year ago could not run the ball. Offensive line, kind of in that same vein. Can they run the ball next year? Because if they can't run the ball, it's going to be really tough. It's going to be really tough for them to be incredibly successful. But if they can run the ball, I trust Sam Levitt and he's healthy. I think the offense will be really good, especially under Charlie Weis. Turning that defense, Baker's one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. I really like the defense. I think they are star-studded. They're full of talent. Weeks will be good. But Lane Kiffin's their head coach, and he's got some stones that have not quite been turned over. He's not won a playoff game, has one playoff appearance, and the expectation at LSU is to win championships. We'll see how that's going to develop. I got him at 5 right now. Oklahoma, I got at 4. Really like the roster. I think the wide receiver room is going to be good. I think the offensive line did some necessary improvements. I think Arbuckle's still a fine offensive coordinator. Really love Brent Venables in the head coach. My biggest question about Oklahoma, do they have enough explosive power to win playoff games and to just flat out beat good teams? Not mess around, find ways to win, play good defensive football, and play keep away and just end up with wins how they did against Texas and how they did against Alabama. But can they line up for 60 minutes and beat a good team? And that's kind of beat a great team. That's kind of my question. I don't know if they can do that quite yet. I know they can mess around, make things ugly, and win. But can they line up against a Texas, against a Georgia, and just be better than them? Just snap the ball, and my guys are better than your guys. I don't know if they're quite there yet. That's why they're at 4. Alabama, I got Alabama right now at 3. Because the quarterback's a ginormous question. The running back's a question. The offensive line's a bit of a question. The wide receiver room's a bit of a question. That defense might be a top 5 defense in the country. It might not be 5, 4, 3, 2, or they might be 1. Secondary's amazing. I really do trust the front 4. Although they lost a little bit in transfers, most of them ended up at Ohio State. I still really think the defense will be incredible. The offense is just what I worry about. I think Russell will start. I think he'll be good. My biggest worry is the running game. In the spring practice, they still couldn't run the ball. This team has to learn how to run the football if they want to win the SEC. That's why I got them at 3. It's because their inability to run, but they're certainly going to be one of the best teams in the SEC. Kalen DeBoer is an awesome coach. Georgia, I got at 2. They are incredible. I think Nate Frazier is one of the best backs in the country. I got him at 5 right now in terms of like overall Georgia running back room. Wide receiver is a massive question. I think Gunnar Stockton, though, is a sneaky New York type guy next year where he might end up at that ceremony. He's really, really good. I think the offensive line is going to be better than it was a year ago. And then that defense, it is a Kirby Smart defense. They are going to be great. I don't see this being a year where they're bad at all. But there's going to be a handful of games and a handful of plays that decide this team's season, just like pretty much every team literally on this list. They need to be good in one-score games. And they need to just play their game and then hope for nothing dumb to happen, because the last couple of years they've dealt with quarterback injuries at really bad times and things like that. But I got them at 2. I think Georgia's going to be really good next year. Shocker. At number 1, it's Texas. A lot of people pounding on the door. This team's overrated. This team's overrated. This team's overrated. This team's overrated. What I'm going to tell you, with that portal class, Biles on defense, Cam Coleman on offense, Smothers, how deep they are. Rakeem's looking like he's going to play every position for Texas this year. They're going to be incredible. Ryan Wingo out there at wide receiver. I don't think there is a roster in America outside of maybe Oregon that's as talented front to back as this Texas one. Plus you have Will Muschamp, you have Steve Sarkisian still leading the offense. They're going to be incredible. They really are. Now, are they going to be perfect? I don't think so, but they're going to be really good. Coming out of spring, I do have them as the best team in the SEC. I would not be shocked if they win the conference. I would not be shocked if they win a whole lot more. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about my SEC power rankings. I know they're always a very hotly debated topic. But moving on. The Heisman race in 2026 is going to be incredibly interesting. I got 4 guys right now that I think are kind of above everybody else, and 4 guys who would not surprise me at all if they end up just flat out winning the award. At number 4, give me Arch Manning. Look, beginning of the year, a season ago, he was very overrated. He did not play very good in the front half of that season, and he would not, if that was how he finished the season, he would not be on this list right now, but it wasn't. He finished it with some incredible games. After that fourth quarter at Mississippi State, he really went on a tear. Georgia's defense ended up getting the best of him. Guess what? Georgia's defense gets the best of most people. Georgia's defense is really good. Breaking news. Arch Manning, though, looked really, really good. His legs looked like a threat. His arm looked like a threat. He looked like he was dealing with a little bit of injury. It came out with that he dealt with. He's really good. And I think Arch Manning is a guy who could end up in New York, might take home the award. And here's the thing that I need to say about Arch Manning. People need to understand who votes for these awards. It is local journalists. It is writers in small towns throughout this country. And those people are going to gravitate towards big names. If you don't watch a ton of football, or college football, that is, say you're more of an NFL guy in Jacksonville and you have a Heisman vote, guess what? When Arch Manning has top 5 level stats and Texas is 11-1 or 10-2, he's gonna get the nod. Because of his last name. It is what it is. It's welcome to life. Having a really big last name is going to end up with you in these types of situations. I think Arch Manning will probably get invited to New York. I got him at 4. At 3, I got Dante Moore. I think Dante Moore is going to be really, really good next year. He arguably could have been like around a top 5 pick. It came out of coming out of college a year ago. He ends up staying, which I think is good for his development overall. Who knows how great it is for his wallet, excuse me. His completion percentage is really good. And when we talk about Dante Moore, we're really talking about one thing. It's kind of that entire Oregon team. How great are they going to be when the postseason comes? How good are they going to be when they go on the road to Ohio State? Because that's pretty much this team's season. The expectation in Oregon is national championship. It should be. The expectation for Dante Moore is Heisman. It should be. He's good enough. And to go along with Dante Moore, like that wide receiver course hurt a year ago. I think Evan Stewart didn't play much. The running back room towards the end of the season was really hurt. The offensive line was really hurt. If those pieces around him can be consistent, and by consistent, I literally mean they consistently are able to play, I think it will help his development a lot too. I think it will help the success of the Oregon offense a ton. And I think it's how he lead Oregon back to the playoffs, lead them to a national championship, lead them and win a Heisman. It comes down to how much synergy is there around him and how consistent are those guys going to be able to play with him and for him. At number 2, Jeremiah Smith. He's one of the best players in college football. Hands down, no question. He's one of the best players in college football. He's the only non-quarterback on this list. I don't know if that ruins number 1 for you guys, but he should be. He's the best player in college football. And my favorite thing about him a year from now, or like for next year, is Ohio State actually plays good football teams, which means he's going to need to get the counting stats. And if he can get the counting stats, I really, really like his odds at winning the Heisman, because sometimes as long as they have the stats and Ohio State has the record and he has a couple of those memorable moments, and that's what he really didn't have a year ago, against Texas this year, against Oregon, against Indiana. He's going to have an opportunity in front of everybody, in front of the country, to make a handful of really, really big plays that he's going to then go and have to make. But if he can make those really big plays, I think he'll be in a great situation to where he could get invited to New York and he might even take the thing home. I think he's that good of a player, and I would not be shocked if he walks away with the Heisman. But with that being said, at number 1, I got Trinidad Chambliss. I think he's the best quarterback returning in all of college football. The Heisman normally goes to the best quarterback. That's the reality of the award. I think he will be a star at Ole Miss next season. And if Ole Miss does want to make the playoffs, if they want to do a little bit more, make a national championship, things of that nature, Trinidad Chambliss has to be a star. He certainly is capable of doing that. He's going to have a running back, and honestly, more of an entire running back room, more than just Lacey, that will put him in a position to be successful. Wide receivers worry me a little bit. Offensive line worries me a little bit. But as well, first of all, because their tackle that they just got from LSU is off doing who knows what. They also got the offensive coordinator from ECU, and I have a lot of respect for the ECU offense a year ago. Caden Hauser was a really good quarterback. He's now at Illinois, was formerly at ECU. And the offensive coordinator should be pretty good now at Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss will be in a very good situation. I think Trinidad will be in a situation where if Ole Miss is successful, he'll end up winning the Heisman. And he showed a year ago in that quarterfinal game that he can have Heisman moments. Third down, he's not the best quarterback. I'd like to see him improve on certain things in terms of his game. But with that being said, I think he way too early is my number 1, is my Heisman favorite. Okay, moving on. There's some great games that are going to happen next year, but I think there's 3 games that just stand above all the other ones. And those games are going to start with Texas, Ohio State. These 2 teams can both afford to lose. That's the nature of a 12-team playoff. But these 2 teams might play in the national championship. And let's look at Texas, because we've talked about them before, and we can just snapshot them a little bit. Cam Coleman's one of the best wide receivers in college football. Arch Manning needs to take that next step. Hollywood Smothers, one of the best running backs. Stars for coaching, and Steve Sarkisian and Will Muschamp. It's star-studded. They might be a top 5 team in the country. I certainly have them as a top 5 team in the country. I think they will be AP ranked a top 5 team in the country. And they're going to host at night Ohio State. An Ohio State team that is coming in also with championship expectation, also with a star-studded coaching staff, also with players that believe they will end up in New York at the end of next year. What more could you want? 2 of the biggest brands in college football at night in Texas in early September? Beautiful. Beautiful. I think it's going to be one of the best games in all of college football next year. It's going to be fun. The next game, Notre Dame, Miami, is going to be elite. There's no way around it. Notre Dame and Miami, and what's going to make this game so fun for me at least, is both these teams have to win. Not necessarily where if I think one of them has 1 loss, they'll miss the playoffs. If you lose this game, your room for error is 0. These 2 teams are not getting in with 2 losses. They don't play hard enough schedules unless Miami ends up winning the ACC championship. But Notre Dame, the whole 12th seed thing's not going to save you because the College Football Playoff Committee is going to not put you in the top 12. That's going to be the reality of the world you live in. But now let's get to the actual teams. I mean, Miami might have the best running back and the best wide receiver rooms in the entire country. I don't think that'd be insane at all. Darian Mensah looks like he might have a case for a Heisman type season, although I think was a little more inconsistent at Duke than people right now are saying that he was. But they're going to be incredible. And then for Notre Dame, you don't think this loss has been eating at them? CJ Carr's first ever start was against Miami, and he looked good, but now he has experience. You can say that about pretty much 3/5 of the offensive linemen at Notre Dame as well. The wide receiver room looks as good as it's looked in some time. There's question marks for Notre Dame at running back, and it certainly will impact this game. But Notre Dame's a running back factory. I'm not awfully worried about the running back position, and Notre Dame's defense is elite. This is going to be one of the best games in college football. And to be honest, the winner has a pretty much inside track / guaranteed track at a college football playoffs. The loser's going to be in some pain. It's going to be difficult for them to end up making the playoffs with a high seed or making the playoffs at all if they have any other stumbles throughout the year. But there is one game that I've called the game of the decade in terms of the buildup, the hype, the situation that's happened around it. Ole Miss LSU is going to be a game for the ages. First of all, the Magnolia Bowl rivalry has been great the last handful of years. We had the shootout, I think, 3 years ago. Then we had Kyron Lacey's walk-off. Then a year ago, we had Ole Miss just kind of a defensive slugfest, find a way to win. So, first of all, it's a rivalry game that they've played incredibly close the last 3 years. Then you get into Lane Kiffin. Excuse me. Then you get into Lane Kiffin and what he's done, which is essentially in the middle of the night, leave Ole Miss and go coach at LSU. That's what he did. That adds a whole new element to this team. And now you have Lane Kiffin essentially calling Ole Miss the most racist place it's ever been. Ole Miss is going to be hostile. Ole Miss is going to be rocking. Vaught Headingway has never had a bigger game than this. Hands down. Ole Miss nationally has not normally been relevant. They've certainly not been relevant to this degree. And they've never had as much hate for one man as they're going to have for Lane Kiffin on September 19th, excuse me. Cannot wait. That game is going to be one of one. I wish I could say I'd be at it. I'll be in Colorado Springs that weekend. I was really debating trying to, spend $1,000 and end up at that game. It's going to be one of the best games ever in college football. I just hope it lives up to the hype because the hype is incredible. And this is truly one of the games of the decade. I cannot wait to watch that game. Next, we're going to look at what are my top 5 venues in college football. I've been to some of these. Just point blank. I've not been to others, which obviously means there's going to be slight bias in there. But in terms of a viewer experience on TV and then a fan experience, these are what I got as my top 5. At number 5, I got Auburn. I've been to Jordan-Hare. I went to the Iron Bowl in 2023, I believe. Whatever year was the Isaiah Bond walk-off. Yeah, it was a one-of-one experience. Auburn is probably, in my opinion, the best game environment that I've ever been to in terms of that one night. And I've been to one other team on this list, one other venue on this list. The feeling before an Iron Bowl can only be described as spiritual. The eagle coming down before the game, it felt like it was a spiritual ritual. And there was a moment that I remember more than really anything else to show just how vast and just how great this environment was, particularly on this day, was we didn't download our tickets, right? So we had to go find cell service. So we went up on this big car parking lot, basically like a big parking garage. And you could see fans as far as the eye can see. I mean, there was 250,000 people there that day. And I don't know if that's like actually that big of an exaggeration, but I legitimately believe there's 250,000 people there. And then Tiger Walk was incredible. Like it was everything that's right about this sport. You get to the stadium. I got to tell you, Auburn is one of the best sound systems I've ever been a part of. Like going into that fourth quarter was such a surreal experience. It was incredible. The game was obviously awesome too, and I try not to have that way too much, but Auburn's a top 5 environment. If you've never been, go. And if you've gone and you disagree with me, I think you're wrong. At number 4, I got LSU. I've been to Baton Rouge. I've been to Baton Rouge at night. I was at the game where Kyron Lacey walked it off, an overtime thriller where LSU was down a lot of the game, comes back and wins. And what I'll tell you is this was one of the best college football environments I've ever been to, hands down. It was one of the best games. A Saturday night in Baton Rouge is so special. We were sitting in the visitors section, and I just remember that right below where it says Death Valley, there's this little stretch of almost open concourse where you could just slowly watch the sunset in the west. Beautiful environment. But I just mentioned speaker systems for Auburn. LSU's kind of stunk, which really sucked because calling Baton Rouge and Neck are 2 awesome traditions that I just don't think are fully utilized because, well, the speaker system was really, really bad. With that being said, the fans were incredible. They did the light show. It was the night with the light show. That was really cool. Entering the fourth quarter, another really close game, another really intense game. Incredible atmosphere. The light show was once again incredible. The game was awesome. And it was another one of those tailgates where it's you swear there's 300,000 people there. And you guys can tell me in the comments exactly how many people there actually are. But it was as surreal as it could really get. At 3, I got Texas A&M. Texas A&M has, from all accounts and purposes of watching on television, I've ever been, one of the best home atmospheres in the entire country. The tradition, it is a cult. Okay, let's call it a spade a spade. Texas A&M is a cult. The cool thing is cults in college football are fun. They don't really end up in Waco. They end up in everyone celebrates and you do weird warrior calls and have guys dressed kind of silly on the sidelines. Texas A&M is a surreal environment. I want to get there one day, particularly for Texas A&M Texas, because that whole rivalry just seems like it'd be an absolute thriller. But the stadium's really cool. It sways back and forth. The 12th man, the place that Johnny built, tons of great tradition. I got them at 3. At 2, I got Penn State. It's Penn State. It's the whiteout. What more could you possibly want in college football than a Penn State whiteout? It is the pinnacle of college football. I will not call it the Mecca. That's reserved for the Rose Bowl. But it is one of those must-get-to venues. It's a lot like Death Valley at night. My one thing that's kind of holding this back a little bit is they stink in whiteout games. And I understand, like, when it's a whiteout, they're playing one of the best teams in literally all of college football, Ohio State, Michigan, whoever have it be. Like, I understand why the record is what it is, but, like, the record's not very good, which sucks. But incredibly memorable moments, the block kick, insane environment. And the other thing that I like about Happy Valley is from everything I've heard about, like, the campus, and this, like, goes to environment and not as much, like, pure stadium, but, like, apparently it's beautiful, at least from what I've heard. And the fans are insane. The pom-poms, speaker system there, I can promise you is really good. You can hear that one on the TV. It's beautiful. But I got Penn State at 2. But at number 1, it's Tennessee. 2022, I believe it was, when they played Alabama. I'm 19. Many people don't believe that. They think I'm 25. Maybe I'm 25. Maybe I just look 25. But I was not familiar with what Tennessee is like when they are good, because for most of my life, they've not been good in the slightest. That venue, the TV product at least, was nothing like I've ever seen in my life. Combine that with Dixieland Delight, which is one of the best traditions in college football, especially for the third Saturday in October, because is it Alabama's, is it Tennessee's? You know, it is singing about a night in Tennessee, not Alabama, but don't get too mad, Alabama fans. But it's one of the best environments in college football. The cigar smoke of that game particularly is incredible. And Knoxville is just a really hostile place to play. And, like, people always joke about, like, the throwing of the tennis balls, or the golf balls, excuse me. And, like, you shouldn't throw things onto the field. I'm not condoning that. But what I am saying is, like, the passion is incredible at Tennessee. They threw the goalpost in the freaking river, for heaven's sakes. Tons of fans as well. It seats well over 100,000. Fireworks show there looks incredible. And the overall, like, lights, the orange just fits that venue so well. Tennessee has really cool jerseys too. The checkered pattern is just a classic. I love so many things about the Tennessee environment. I want to get there one day and I want to sing Dixieland Delight with all of you beautiful people. Okay. Moving on. Back to, like, actual, college football stuff come 2026. What were the best coordinator moves in this past offseason for teams that are looking to really make a splash and end up back in the national spotlight that maybe were not there over the last couple of years? The first coordinator move that really, found my eye was Jim Knowles. Jim Knowles has been incredibly successful at Ohio State. He had found some success at Penn State, although it might not have been incredible. But now he's at Tennessee, and Tennessee's long been a team that if they had a defense was a national title contender. Josh Heupel is one of the best offensive minds in all of college football. Well, now they got a defensive coordinator that, to all accounts and purposes, is very good. He's also bringing in good players like Chaz Coleman and Campbell from Penn State. So they're going to have the talent. Can they finally perform? And it reminds me a lot of Lincoln Riley. And Gary Patterson's not on this list, but he's also a tremendous coach, tremendous defensive mind. But, like, we've seen these great offensive minded head coaches make defensive hires that really don't end up working out. Jim Knowles is going to really push that to the test, because he's a great defensive mind. He really is. But we've seen before great defensive hires struggle and fail. I don't think Jim Knowles will. I think Jim Knowles will be an incredible defensive coordinator. If this was one of those really special Tennessee offensive years, I would be very intrigued to see where, like, people would put them. I think Jim Knowles will be successful. He's definitely one of the best coordinator moves heading into 2026. But I want to see, what will he look like at Tennessee? And will the defense live up to what they could potentially live up to? Next, we talked about him earlier in the show, but Charlie Weis going from Ole Miss to LSU is a huge deal. He's averaged over the last 2 years, I believe, 498 yards of total offense, which is just unreal. He's the only person to lead an offense in the SEC that has averaged more than 100 plus passing yards and 180 plus rushing yards per game. He earned the Broyles Award a year ago. Or no, he was a semifinalist, I believe. I don't think he quite won the award. A year ago, he was one of the best coordinators in the country. Obviously followed Lane Kiffin. The offense is loaded with talent next year. Look, Sam Leavitt, Jace Brown from Kansas State, Jordan Seaton from Colorado. They should be really good. He's going to have the pieces to be very successful, and he's a brilliant offensive mind. And I'm curious how long he wants to be an offense coordinator, because I feel like a head coaching job is going to be in his future fairly shortly. He was one of the best hires in the entire cycle. Charlie Weis should be a star at LSU. We're going to stay in the SEC. We're going to stay at the offense coordinator position. Buster Faulkner, moving from Georgia Tech to Florida, I think is probably one of the most underrated coordinator moves. Georgia Tech's had an incredible offense the last couple of years, and not necessarily the most talent or the most conventional offenses. It relied a lot on Haynes King's ability to run the football. It relied on a lot of RPO run type stuff and a lot of gadgety type stuff, which I think will fit very well into Florida's offense, because Florida's got some really good wide receivers coming into next year. They return a couple. They've brought in a couple from the portal. One in Singleton, I believe that's his name, went from Georgia Tech to Auburn and back to Florida. Very good. He also has Ba, who's one of the best running backs in the country. But there's also huge questions for Buster, particularly, and we went through them earlier, offensive line and wide receiver. Or not wide receiver, excuse me, offensive line and quarterback. There's huge question marks there. What's the quarterback situation going to be look like? And when I talk about Georgia Tech, I've talked about them in a very similar light of was Haynes King the ceiling on that offense or the floor? And we're going to see next year with Florida, because the offense coordinator obviously went to Florida, but was Haynes King the reason why Buster looked as good as he did? Or was Haynes King almost the limiting reactant into what Buster's offenses can fully become? We'll see next year with how great that quarterback play is. Right now, I'm still not incredibly optimistic about how great the quarterback or the offensive line play will be. But we'll see. Buster is certainly one of the best offensive minds in college football. I would not be shocked if Florida shocks the world offensively next year, and maybe is in a position where they're in the top 25 or college football playoffs, which is certainly not what I'm predicting right now. Finally, for some of the best coordinator moves throughout all of college football, I got Jason Beck. He was the Utah offensive coordinator. Now he's moving to Michigan. And the reason why I really wanted to talk about him is because, my God, is there question marks for me. Okay, what is Michigan's offense? A year ago, they could run the ball, and if you had just asked Bryce Underwood to throw the ball, you couldn't. He could not do it. And the wide receivers, to his defense, could not catch. Those are two massive problems that need to get fixed and need to get fixed in a hurry, or this ceiling on Michigan is pretty low. That's just the point blank period. With the schedule that they got, they play Ohio State, they play Indiana, they play Oregon, they play Oklahoma. The schedule, the ceiling on that team is incredibly low if Bryce Underwood's not good and if that wide receiver core is not a lot better. Now, the good news is his development of quarterbacks has been at a really high level. They averaged 41.5 points a game a season ago, which is incredible. So there's reason to be optimistic about Jason Beck, and he's turned Napier into a pretty darn good quarterback. But Bryce Underwood is the biggest question mark, honest to God, in the country in terms of quarterback on a contending team. Because on one half, I look at what Michigan's defense will be, which is unrelated, I know, to Beck, but I'm like, they're going to be really good. I look at the run game, I'm like, okay, that's going to be really good. Freshmen coming in, some returning pieces that are really good, they're going to be stars. But when I look at that offense and their ability to throw the ball, I'm left with so many questions. And Jason Beck is going to have an opportunity to either shut me up or prove me right. And yeah, we'll see. Your guess is as good as mine. I've obviously not been very high on Bryce Underwood if you've seen my TikTok lives or just overall watch me talk about Michigan this offseason. But with that being said, crazier things have happened. So, moving on. Let's look at a conversation that's been coming up on X the last handful of weeks, really over the last 2 to 3 years. The future of the G6 and the future of Power 4 as college football ever looks to expand. It's the great expansion. It's freaking Manifest Destiny College Football Edition. The G6 is kind of not getting talked about a ton, and what the impact they will have for this. I think there's really two routes that this thing goes. Okay, In one way, it's the split. That's what I have on screen, and they just split. The G6 goes and creates their own playoffs, very similar to the FCS, and the Power 4 creates their own playoffs. I'm a North Dakota State fan, obviously. We get to North Dakota State here at the end. It would intrigue me a lot if that's what happens, because there's a lot of programs right now that have been moving up from the FCS that will never win a national championship. There's no G6 program right now that can win a national championship at the FBS level. But there's been some programs that I think could probably regret not still being in the FCS. Particularly some of those Sun Belt teams that have came up and really found mediocrity, not greatness. App State, Georgia Southern, Coastal Carolina, they've all kind of like had their year or two, and maybe that's what they moved up to do. But none of them have really found consistent success. It looks like right now it's James Madison's conference to win, which, funny enough, is former FCS team as well. But, like, I don't think the G6 would be against a G6 playoff. I think a lot of people would watch, contrary to popular belief. A lot of people, I saw there's a guy over on TikTok who I was arguing with a couple days ago who said nobody would watch the G6 playoffs. And I just disagree. People watch the FCS playoffs. G6 have bigger alumni bases, bigger networks, and they have support. Like, they really do. These are not programs that people don't watch. The MAC, right? It's a lot of talk before about like their attendance, but like the MAC is one segment, and there are some low G6 teams that don't have many people show up to their games, but there's also some very proud G6 programs like Memphis, like Boise State, like James Madison, like NDSU, like UNLV, Fresno State, that like when they're good, people watch. A lot of people watch, and I think a G6 playoff would be a good opportunity for the Power 4. It obviously makes sense for them to split. They'd get a bigger piece of the pie. They wouldn't have to play these G6 teams. They'd make more money. The usual suspects of what drives changes in college football. How much money can the Big Ten and the SEC make? That's really what's going to determine this situation. In terms of what I personally want to see happen, what I want to see happen is a world where there's a G6 playoff, but there's also a Power 4 playoff, and they're not completely separate things. So there's a G6 team that can make the college football playoff, like the true Power 4 one. But if that team loses, they get kicked into like a certain round of the G6 playoff. So making the playoffs doesn't mean you can't win a G6 championship. But at the same time, there's also a G6 playoff, which would allow these teams more exposure, more TV revenue, and we would finally get to just do away with the bowl system. And it sucks. I like the bowl system as much as the next guy. But with that being said, a lot of people don't play in the games. Nobody really goes to the games. Nobody really watches. And with a G6 playoff, you can play these things at home field environments. Imagine James Madison, Boise State, NDSU, Memphis. Say the games in James Madison and Fargo. Those are must-watch atmospheres. They really are. They're that good. Although the national media might not rave about them. They'd be really cool games. It'd be a really fun format. I'm not against that. With the G6 playoff, 8 teams. With a Power 4 only playoff, 12 teams. You cannot have any more in either of those formats. Otherwise, I think you just let too many teams in. Too many teams participate in postseason play. Postseason play is supposed to be special in college football. It's not a let's invite everybody to the party type format. It's been that format for a long time. Think 5 decades ago, there were 6 bowl games. Postseason in college football should be incredibly difficult to get to. It should not be an invitation. It should not be an invitation to all party. It should be really tough. And that's what I would do with the G6 and the Power 4 here in the future. Will it get done? Most likely not. And honestly, if that is the case, I think the way that the G6 would sign on is if there's a promotion relegation system between the G6 and the Power 4. And I think you can honestly get enough Power 4 ADs to sign on to that. For the sole reason that Alabama would sign on, because who really cares? They're never going to get demoted. That kind of idea. So I don't think that's completely out of the realm of possibilities. Very intrigued to see what the future of the G6 and Power 4 is, especially now with NDSU being in the G6. With that being said, update of the week for NDSU. A week ago, they're going bowling. That was huge news. Which is awesome. It still sounds like they'll go bowling. There's still more playoff hype, conference championship hype, things of that nature, which is just insane, unreal to think about as a Bison fan. But the update for this week, Tim Polasek's deal has finally been announced. His extension was signed in December, if I'm not mistaken. But the actual contract is now fully been announced. We're going to really talk about the next 2 years. Next year, in 2026, he's going to make $815,000. Now, there's a lot of people in North Dakota that are talking about $815,000 for a head coach. Why are we spending the money? This could go to better things. And to those people, you do not understand what a successful college football program means to a city and to a state. You don't know. Alabama college, not really hard to get into in terms of like academic prestige. I'm not going to call it a basket weaving contest like Steve Sarkisian did, but it's not remarkably hard to get into. But the reason why it's a national name is because of college football. And I'm not saying NDSU is going to be Alabama. What I'm saying is NDSU could be Boise State. NDSU could be San Diego State. Those are realistic possibilities. And the way you do that is you see something that's been successful, and that's NDSU's football program, and you invest in it. And you say, okay, here's the capital. Now go out and be successful. And the other thing, especially towards the future, this has to be $1 million a year coaching position, because Tim Polasek's not going to be here forever. I've been very open about that. He's a Wisconsin or Iowa head coach in the waiting. He's not going to be here forever. To attract a good name to this school, you're going to need to put up $1 million, maybe even $1.5 million eventually. I think NDSU will be able to do that. There's tons of new revenue streams coming in. And third of all, if you're one of those people who goes, why are we spending $1 million on a football head coach? Invest in library. Look, this is all privately funded. These people were not going to donate to get a new library. They love watching college football. They were going to invest in college football. It was either help Tim Polasek get a bigger contract or go buy a house in the South for when I retire. Southern part of the United States where it's nice is what I mean. That was the decision for these big donors, these big farmers, big oil men, big bankers, whoever ended up writing this check, I'm unfamiliar. But that was the decision. It was not, should I give this money to go feed the hungry or feed the homeless or give it so NDSU is a better football coach? That was never the decision. And it doesn't need to be the decision because that's their money, not yours. Now looking at the grand Mountain West picture, the national picture, thanks to NSN for this graphic. 1.6 or 1.1 to 1.26, or I think it's 1.16. I think that's actually a mess up on my part. Would put him at fourth, or ahead of San Jose State's coach, which is really good because San Jose State is a very expensive place to live. So 1.6, 1.1 goes far less in San Jose than it does in North Dakota. State income tax is a lot lower. So it puts us in the top half of the conference, which is really where I think we should be. And I suspect that this number actually gets significantly larger in the next coming years. I'm thinking 1.5, maybe even 2, is kind of where I think NDSU will kind of finalize in terms of once Polasek leaves, and the next guy will probably receive somewhere in that ballpark once the FBS money really starts to hit. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the new deal. It's incredible. As long as we can keep Tim Polasek around, be incredibly grateful. If this number needs to get slightly bigger to keep him from a Power 4 school, do it. If it takes 3.5 to keep him away from Iowa and Wisconsin and he's willing to settle down in Fargo, do it. He's such an incredible coach. I cannot rave about Tim Polasek enough. I think he will be incredible in the Big Ten when he gets there or wherever he might end up. He's an incredible coach. I'm so happy we were able to re-sign him. But that's all for this episode. If you guys are new here, subscribe. Let me know in the comments what I missed. Drop likes. And if you guys made it this far, let me know. I mean, this is a 50-minute video. If you guys made it this far, let me know.